to be a storyteller, I think you have to take yourself into a really different kind of mindset. You have to put yourself kind of into the shoes of your audience in order to tell that story and create things that resonate.
It's an innate desire for us to be told stories. Rather than thinking of people as customers, stakeholders, or shareholders, think of everyone as a viewer. You cannot inform or educate anyone unless you've made them feel something first. And I think brands can really fill this gap.
Welcome back to another episode of Traction Control. I'm Stacey Miller, and today I wanted to talk about a few really intriguing headlines that I think are signaling a pivot for brands. Now, what do I mean about that? I think that a lot of us are focused about broadcasting our messages to the masses, meaning we want to get our messages to as many people as possible. We're trying to extend our reach and influence. But what if I told you that brands actually need to become the media? It's a really interesting concept, but check out some of these headlines. MSNBC is doubling down on their live event strategy and broadcasting those, trying to deepen audience engagement and build program that feels more experimental or experiential. Jimmy Fallon has a new on-brand competition that focuses on branding, TV, and audience creativity to help consumer companies share some of their branding challenges and solve them. And Mattel, the popular toy maker, is also merging its film and TV units to create Mattel Studios. So now, more than just toys, but it's a product brand acting like an entertainment broadcaster. So all of those fun brands that you know, like Barbie and Hot Wheels and Masters of the Universe, all have these new brand storytelling and TV broadcast elements. So there's definitely some context and trends that are supporting this shift, right? We're seeing brands building their own newsrooms, case in point, and becoming the media, pivoting from brands as publishers to brands as broadcasters, which is what we're going to talk about today. And things like broadcast and e-commerce are now merging. Think about TikTok Shop. Think about shoppable TV, interactive content. I turned on my TV the other day, the Roku TV, and during the commercial, I got a QR code to scan if I wanted to buy the tequila that was being displayed on the screen. Wow. So lots of mobile first, vertical video, interactive storytelling is becoming more and more important for brands. And all of this second screen engagement that consumers are engaging in is becoming important as well. So lots of times we're not actively focused on what we're watching. We're multitasking and we're on those mobile devices. All things that brands need to consider as they work on evolving their brand strategies, particularly in the automotive aftermarket. So all of this to say, it's an exciting time to be a brand and control the narrative a bit more and tell your story in a way that resonates with your audience. So my guest today, which I'm very excited about, is a master at brand broadcasting, and he's a trusted advisor on content and growth to media and technology companies. His name is Simon Shelley, and he crafts strategies that realize the opportunities of ever-changing viewing habits and data-driven innovations. Simon is currently advising Natter, which harnesses the collective wisdom of thousands of people instantly. We're going to talk about what he does for Natter in just a bit. So welcome, Simon.
Great to be here.
Such a great guest today. I'm really excited. We met by fate.
Yes.
When you started doing consulting for Natter. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing now and what that platform is.
Well, going back a step, thanks for your introduction. I've been involved in media content brands for decades. It makes me sound really old.
Not at all.
Shouldn't date myself. I set up a division at BBC Studios when I was global vice president to create programs, stories about the issues shaping society, about many different industries and disciplines for BBC.com audiences around the world. There's 500 million BBC viewers, 100 million are online, and we work with brands to tell those stories. And we can come back to that in a minute, but one of the things that fascinated me was about how we get to know audiences better. An organisation that I'm advising at the moment, Natter, puts thousands of people or hundreds into simultaneous one-on-one conversations about a particular topic or a theme, and then it summarises the trends of those discussions instantly. And it's being used by big corporates, mainly to give underrepresented employees a voice, Accenture, Deloitte, and others. But actually, there's a fascination with how it could help membership bodies, and I think that's where fate brought us together, but also how it might help brands understand stakeholders, consumers, customers better as well.
I love your background in storytelling, and from BBC to I think ITV as well. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that, because how did you come to be a broadcaster, and what got you excited about some of those roles? Because you did that for quite a number of years, right?
Yes, I did. Cool. What was the journey? I studied marketing. I got a master's in marketing, and so I suppose cut my teeth in understanding those basics of marketing. But of course, it's not a very useful degree in some respects, because marketing changes and has changed really in the last few years to be unrecognizable from the syllabus that I learned.
Kidding.
But that was where I realized that I was fascinated by the media. I was fascinated by storytelling. I probably didn't realize back then that storytelling was central to it all. But marketing is quite simply that. And it would give me the ick, to use a Love Island term, that when there was corporate speak, and so I gradually got into making films, and that's where I started to go to ITN, who makes national news in Britain, and wrote a business plan to think about programs that we could create about particular issues that where we could bring brands in as well. And at that point, people just couldn't understand that a brand could tell a story that would be of value to viewers without having to give exceptional consideration to their message, that it was an advert. And I use that term, that phrase, because I think that's the connotations that people get from it. But gradually that we got from there to a point where brands started to really engage in storytelling in audiences, and then took that on to the BBC, and it has absolutely flourished. At the same time as media and marketing developing and changing, and the sentiments of marketing professionals also changing in terms of what they want to put across to audiences.
I love what you said about how marketing is different than the textbooks we saw in college. And I think a lot of people, when they think about marketing, they think about advertising, like you said, adverts. And to be a storyteller, I think you have to take yourself into a really different kind of mindset. You have to put yourself kind of into the shoes of your audience in order to tell that story and create things that resonate, right? And to a degree, marketing is also a lot of psychology. It's about tapping into human feelings, into human beliefs, and all of those things, right? I assume that was a big part of your brand storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, going back a step, you mentioned in the intro brands as broadcasters, and that's absolutely right. But a lot of what needs to happen is brands thinking like broadcasters. Brands are broadcasters by virtue of the changes in marketing you mentioned. So all of a sudden, marketing media was democratized. We could take a video now. We are taking a video now, and you can post it to the whole world.
Yeah.
They're completely democratized in terms of platforms and be able to reach millions of people. YouTube is bigger than Disney at the moment. I know that's on revenue, but it gives you a sense of the scale of that platform. So the opportunity for brands to be broadcasters is there. But there's a problem, which is that in doing so, brands are just making more and more and more content, and they're not really thinking about the creation of it in terms of what value it's providing, and the curation of it, where it's going and how and there's a consistency or a strategy to it. So it's what I call content landfill. It's just content for the sake of it. So there's a problem there in the sense that the content isn't cutting through. There's another problem as well, which is that brands can be broadcasters. We've just established that. But there's a feeling from a lot of brands that they need to have a voice. And maybe this is brands in the auto care market who maybe haven't ever had to think about speaking to people, to audiences, to stakeholders beyond the people that they do business with. But all of a sudden, whether that's a personal thing from business owners, or whether that's what society demands, or whether that's what consumers demand in terms of the provenance of their products, or how that company is treating their staff, or the planet or society, there needs to be a voice on these issues, and that is a good thing. But by and large, it's great. But that also has pitfalls, and done poorly, that can have an adverse effect. I mean, if I count a couple of examples,
Yeah,
I was amongst many household name brands. I've worked with some massive B2B brands. There was a company called ResMed that helps with sleep apnea and respiratory conditions for people in sleep. And for years and years and years, it was just prescribed globally by physicians, by doctors, by healthcare. They don't need to do anything as such, but ensure that doctors are prescribing this. But all of a sudden, they realised that they're involved in people sleeping properly in terms of respiratory conditions, that's air quality, and overall wellness and health, and realised they wanted to have a voice on that. So you've got a multi-billion-dollar company that all of a sudden has the means to tell stories. How do they go about that? But then you've got other household name brands getting it wrong. The example of wading into social issues when you may not want to is, I remember Black Lives Matter and Pepsi making an advert with Kim Kardashian.
It's a big one.
Of course, over here, which exploited social unrest. Of course, she was set with police officers at a protest, and then they all break to have a Pepsi. which got it completely wrong, but it came from a place of wanting to be involved in and have a voice on those issues.
Yeah. So you were talking about the content landfill, and I really appreciate that, because I think when people think content, you hear this phrase, content is king. And to a lot of brands, that means I need to produce more content. But that content may not all be quality content. And then it goes into the landfill because we have really short attention spans. It's becoming even harder to break through the noise. When you were working with some of these brands, creating these stories, I'm sure they came to you with some ideas and you had to kind of bite your tongue and say, okay, this might not be the best way to tell this. How did you kind of coach brands, or how did you help them find what that story was for someone who was starting from scratch and didn't really understand that this isn't an advertisement, this isn't PR, this is who you are? Well,
this comes to that central idea of think like a broadcaster. Thinking like a broadcaster the idea is that if you take a BBC or an Apple or a Disney, what do they consider when they're making their content? And yes, they're thinking about characters, and they're thinking about shining a new light on an issue, and they're thinking about really getting to know their audiences and what happens after the audience views something, and thinking about high quality. And we can dig into all of those things. But ultimately, there's one central idea, which is that rather than thinking of people as customers, stakeholders, or shareholders, think of everyone as a viewer first. Get them to feel something. Get them to have some kind of emotional connection. And when I say that, emotional connection doesn't need to be sadness, tears, cry. It can be joy. It can be laughter. Something that makes them feel something. Get them to like the content first, and the rest will follow. And it really is as simple as that. And it's amazing how still brands want to give exceptional consideration to their message. And there's science behind it. It's not rocket science. I mean, our brains are hardwired to link the way we feel to the information that we're being given. So if we do feel something, then what we're being told is likely to be remembered.
Yeah, that's really true. It makes me think about, do you watch the Super Bowl ever?
Of course.
Do you think they're, like, the ads used to be funny and now they're not funny, and I don't feel anything, and I don't remember those brands anymore. Yeah. Right?
I think it's difficult to be funny.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a really hard thing to do for brands, but some are getting it so right. There's some brilliant examples.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's weird to think about a time where I could remember a Cheetos commercial and, like, what is a Cheeto to me? I don't know. It's some little orange puffy thing that you eat that's really bad for you. But whatever story they told with their Cheetah and they created this funny thing, it was more memorable for me, right? Yeah. And I remember that even now, or a Doritos commercial. But it's like, what did Doritos and Cheetos have to do with the auto care industry and storytelling? It's that they crafted something that was memorable that broke through the noise. So how do we do something similar?
Well, the thing about the Super Bowl ad break is that arguably that is, dare I say it, older old-fashioned
Yeah.
marketing. I mean, of course, if you're a brand and you're on the Super Bowl ad break, phenomenal. You know you get a great exposure there, but it is limiting. It limiting in the sense that you've got a certain amount of time, you've got a certain demographic that's watching, and it needs to be produced in a certain way. If you go onto platforms like YouTube, like I was going to say X, but Instagram or Meta or anything else that you want to use, there's the opportunity to do different things, to think about the format, the vertical storytelling, but the ongoing storytelling as well. So not just one piece, but consecutive pieces. There's so many different ways that you can be creative on those platforms. As I said, someone offered me a Super Bowl ad break. Then you're not turning it down for a brand, but that might be an argument to say that those brands that are really driving laughs aren't necessarily doing it there; they're doing it elsewhere.
No kidding. And I mean, speaking of YouTube, the way that this platform has proliferated content, the way it consumes content and consumers consume the content on that platform, I mean, we're getting more reach on YouTube for some brands than you would have if you had done some sort of in-stream display or TV advertising or media buy. And like you said, it's so democratized. We're going to post this on YouTube later.
Yeah.
And, one of our latest podcasts has over 60,000 views, and we didn't expect that. And
it's amazing.
Like there was once upon a time you'd have to pay for that, and that wouldn't have been cheap. So, and here we are in this room doing it ourselves.
And actually, 60,000 views. It's always surprising when I hear the number of views that are estimated for TV programs, big broadcasters, and for whatever reason you're expecting millions, but actually the number of views are in the thousands, and you're thinking, wow, that's the tables have shifted.
Yeah, and the way that ideas spread, I think, thanks to social media. This is something that really fascinates me, and I'd love your take on this because I know you've worked across a bunch of different platforms. But, ever since the advent of social media, we've seen nothing but growth in the sharing of ideas and stories, and, stories that you may not have heard before, that may not have ever made it to the light of day on a TV program or a newspaper or whatever those traditional forms of media are. So in working with brands, some of your top tips or things that you learned or gleaned from the social media proliferation of content and how to tell that story across social media. It's changing every day, so this might be a tough one.
No, I mean, it is, but I think that coming back to storytelling, the tenets of storytelling hold fast. It's an innate desire for us to be told stories. It's, even from when we sat around the campfire as cavemen and women, or that's what we want. And I know a lot of the time people say, just give me the facts, but we need to be taken on that journey. So I did a study that I set up at BBC, which is called What Keeps Viewers Glued. And what we wanted to measure was the highest performing pieces of content on social media. And we studied nearly 500 pieces of content over a period of time. What we were looking for was viewer duration. So those where viewers watched until the end, and we looked at the correlating trends of the top performing pieces. And it's nothing surprising. That's the thing.
Really?
But there were three main things that came through, and everyone knows what they are. The first one is strong characters. Now, who's the protagonist? Who's carrying the story? And that person, if they have got some passion, they've got some emotion, they've got some knowledge, I call that gravitas. And it could be anyone. It doesn't have to be a CEO. It could be anyone. As long as they've got some kind of passion, emotion, or knowledge, then you might associate yourself with that person, and all of a sudden you're locked into that story. And it's amazing how important it is to have a strong character and think about who your central character is. Coming back to think like a broadcaster, that's what, when Netflix or Disney are sat in a room, they're thinking about a new show, they're thinking about main character energy. Who's the lead character that's going to come through? Then the second thing is scene setting. That's what we found, is that when you take the time to put someone in a location, a place, and of course, when the opportunity arises, you want amazing vistas and beautiful sunrises and sunsets, but it doesn't have to be that. even if it's in an office environment, there's techniques like actuality of sound. Not everything has to start with a corporate music soundtrack. Just have some space and sound to ground people in that place. Even put big text on screen saying where you are, but it immediately puts the person in that location, and that seems to work incredibly well. And then the final thing is taking viewers on a journey. Again, it sounds so obvious, but sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. It's the challenges, it's the pitfalls, and we can talk about solutions focused storytelling in a moment, because that is an issue. But people like to feel as though there's that roller coaster ride, even if they know what the ending is going to be. I mean, I was talking to you about cricket before, as you say, from Trinidad, and there's a beautiful program in the UK at the moment with a very famous cricketer, Freddie Flintoff. He gets a bunch of disadvantaged kids together who've never had the opportunity to play the sport, and they come together and they learn and they bond, and you know what the outcome is going to be. Isn't that? I mean, obviously, you know what the ending is going to be. Everyone's going to be, but the journey getting there is so rewarding.
So feel good.
Yeah. So I think it's just, and I don't think those things are just having that mindset, thinking about those things, applying them to what you're going to make. And even if you've got even if it's a fairly routine story, but just thinking about how you might be a little bit more open to the challenges to create that jeopardy that might give you that journey. Just thinking about just a breath at the start to just think about where that story is being told, and just think about who that main person is. We want to know more about the world around that main person.
That's really inspiring. What I feel like you're telling me right now is that I should think like a movie producer in everything that I do, because I'm like, all right, I know who the villain is right now. I know who the hero is right now. We know how we want this story to end. Okay, now how do we tell that in a way to people that gets them active and engaged? Like we do advocacy here at AutoCare, right? Yeah. Telling the story of right to repair is always, it's a challenge, right? We have to explain to people, to lawmakers, why it's important, why they should care. And it's really difficult for them to read a fact sheet and digest it and really understand the issue. But if we tell the story of the hero, who's the mom who's taking her kid to school, and the villain who is the automaker who's locking her out of the car because she can't get the data to fix her car, maybe it's something a little different. You
humanize it. I mean, when I think of right to repair, and this is just off the cuff, I think of my grandma who's 97 and she still drives.
What?
And she drives a Honda Jazz, and she's had it since early 2000s, and she feels really comfortable in that car. And something went wrong with it, and we had to work really hard to get the parts, because if it was a new car, I think she would have lost her confidence and not continued driving. And then that's kind of her mobility, her freedom, her independence gone. I just think of that as a off the cuff story, but humanizing it, and it starts to make sense to. It's
a great story. You said very little there, but I could picture your 97-year-old grandma. I hope I got this right for the auto industry, and I'm not embarrassing myself, but I think a Honda Jazz over there is a Honda Fit here. So data nerds, check me on that. I hope so. If not, I'm probably fired.
Yeah. Great car.
And I get that. I understand that. So that's way to be off the cuff, Simon. Like, this is why you're here. Yeah. So you were talking about solution-based storytelling. Yeah. So there's an answer, there's a solution, like you're solving a problem for someone. So you're presenting an issue, and that's also part of the storytelling, right?
Yeah. So where this comes from is that I used to work alongside the newsrooms, ITM, which is all the channels in the UK, and BBC, and there was an issue with telling positive news. We I don't know, as humans, we don't seem to be as attuned to positive news as we like the doom and gloom.
Yeah.
So there's a real drive to tell better stories, but it's difficult, because you want to tell a good story about something, it just feels like a puff piece, particularly coming from a brand. And there's so many good things to say, but if you don't frame it in the right way, it just doesn't feel believable or authentic. So we started to research ways to do this, and solutions-focused storytelling was just a formula, in a sense of providing the context, providing the challenges, being open about the challenges. This is a thing that a lot of people need to get beyond, I suppose, when it comes to a brand that's starting to tell their story to the world. Maybe if you're a brand, you don't want to say that anything might have been difficult or challenging. Everything's fantastic as a brand, but actually more and more, and I think research suggests that particularly younger generations are okay with transparency. Which I'm getting more Love Island. Recently. They talk about radical transparency.
Yeah,
I love Island.
This concept. And they're talking about it on Love Island.
Yeah, they are radical transparency.
Oh my God!
Tell it how it is.
Give me a break.
Tell it how it is, and it's people that appeals to people, that openness. So that's important in there, and then there's of course evidence. So you outline the solution, but is there evidence? And I think the thing that we found, interestingly, that really attracts viewers is scalability. If you've got a good idea, that's one thing. If it can be scaled and it can help a lot of people, if the right to repair story, getting off the cuff. I mean, it's all very well, in certain areas of the industry, but just imagine right across how that can support so many people, and imagine it in other industries as well. It's that scalability is a powerful thing, along with hopes for the future is another thing that just seems to land with audiences.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's it's kind of a classic concept, what you just described, the solution focused storytelling, because I think its origins were probably in advertising as it was classically taught to us, right? Like you present a problem and then there's a solution and then there's a call to action. That's like the most basic structure for every ad that you see on the internet. Yeah. But what this does is this puts a layer on top of it with more transparency, more storytelling to make it more relatable and make it more exciting to people to understand and listen to.
Exactly. And look, we started saying that marketing's changed, but maybe it hasn't. Maybe all of those ideas are just evolving, and it's just leaning into them more. Like you say, that structure, it's nothing new. It's existed, but two things: accentuating elements of it, but secondly, not forgetting it. Because in our rush to make content and get it out there, that's where the mistakes are made, and we just forget actually to tell a proper story and take our time.
Keep the audience in mind. I think that's a really good tip. You're right, because we have to work really fast. We have to be really agile. All of the brands listening to this podcast are running businesses, so marketing may not be top of mind. So when someone says, we need to do a marketing campaign for such and such part, get it out the door. Okay, cobble it together, get it out the door. But we don't stop and take the time to think about the audience and what are they thinking? What are they feeling? How could we make this more effective? So I think that's...
Put the viewer first. Just think of the viewer. Put yourself in the mindset of Disney and think, right, who's the character? What happens after someone's watched this? Mm-hmm. What do we want people to think, feel, and do? It must be high quality as well. It's a representation of your brand. Actually, Disney's a great example. They're making amazing shows that aren't animations or Mickey Mouse, but they've still got that Disney sparkle. You've got to think about the consistency. Okay, Disney's budgets are
it's a little different,
vastly different. But as I said, it's not about. It's just how the starting point is the mindset.
I really appreciate that, and the transparency fact about it too. I think our minds, as the generations changed, have evolved, and the type of media that we consume is different. And yes, we're in a lot of doom and gloom right now. And I think there was a time where maybe we weren't so into that and we wanted the happy stories. And now we're really into the doom and gloom, and it's time for those happy stories again. Like, do you notice the news programs now? There's like a good news of the week, like type segment, and they're doing those again. And I thought those were dead, but apparently people really need some good news lately because we're very transparent about what's going on in the world. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of other priorities. So we got to bring something good. And again, something interesting to catch people's attention. That's not that doom and gloom that's happening right now.
Yes. And in other news, that's what we used to call it.
What did you call it?
In other news.
And in other news, that's a perfect transition.
That was the transition to, there was a fluffy cat that can skateboard or something like that.
Yeah.
that can do that. And yeah, I think people yearn for that. I think there's people want solutions. They do want them. That's the thing. It's just they just need to be couched in the right way. And it comes back to that tenet of we just got to set the scene. We've got to make people feel something, and then we can talk to them about the solution. But people are yearning for that, desperate for it.
Yeah. How do you feel about today's day and age of all this new technology? Because attention spans are dwindling. Messages are continuing to come out faster than ever before. And now we have ways to create messages even faster than ever before. Hello, AI. It's a topic probably on every single episode. How are you navigating storytelling in this age of information, which I don't have a fancy term to call it, but it needs it needs a term. It's just insane the amount of information we're supposed to process and synthesize and understand on a day-to-day basis.
God, that's a big question. Attention. Well, I heard somewhere that our attention spans are now officially shorter than a goldfish. They're 8 seconds. We're 7 seconds. But then I don't really believe that, because YouTube duration of viewing figures is around 6 minutes, the average. So actually, it's becoming a longer form on YouTube. So I don't know what to make of all of that. In terms of, I suppose, AI. It's interesting. We did a natter actually with the PR Association in the UK, and quite a few things that came out of that was that AI can show up a lack of imagination in PR. So actually, for some reason, we have an innate ability still, just not in all cases, to spot AI and know that there's something wrong with it. And maybe there's a couple of things there. One is that AI is everything that's gone before. So how do you create something new? That's our imaginations. But there's also something about human messiness that is that transparency, that emotion, that something that's funny is inherently a little bit messy a lot of the time. And that comes from human intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. Maybe just still.
Yeah.
Probably not for much longer.
God, I hope not. The day that I'm not able to tell, something AI generated versus human generated is going to be the day that I give up. Because
I know.
It's getting so close now, but I was talking about this on another podcast. I can read people's social media posts and I can tell when that was generated by AI. You can tell. Like, I know that's not your voice.
Yes.
I know you didn't put that emoji there. I know that's not your punctuation because I've known you for X amount of years. Yeah. So, at what point is it too much? It doesn't have all that human creativity. But it's creating, again, more of this mass information, this deluge of information that's making it harder and harder for people to pay attention.
But I will say that AI, that's generative AI, and there's a lot of AI tools that can really support the creation of content in terms of administrative tasks, whether that's transcripts or whether that's helping frame or if you're starting with a blank sheet of paper. And actually, not just AI, but if you think of other technology, and we've talked about this before, the cost of really great equipment coming down. And I suppose that lends itself to brands that maybe are starting out storytelling. Again, it's democratizing it.
Exactly. Well, that's a perfect segue into learning more about Natter and what you're doing there, because that's a really cool AI tool that I actually got to see in action today live. I participated in my very first Natter. I was very impressed, by the way. So tell me a little bit about how that tool and you came together and how you're kind of bringing some of your storytelling prowess to Natter and their clients. Sure.
Well, amongst some projects I'm advising, Natter, as I mentioned before, Natter puts thousands of people into simultaneous one-on-one conversations, and it summarizes the trends of those discussions instantly. And it's been really successful with large corporates, but there's a sense that it can be widened to really capture the voice of anyone. And it's what's amazing about this, actually, and coming back into the human element versus AI, as it were, is that it's one-on-one conversations. So firstly, everyone has an input, and these are running simultaneously. Everyone has an input which contributes to the collective output. So it's a synthesis of all of the millions of words that have been spoken into these trends and themes, and it's instantaneous. And it's wonderful that everyone can input. So there's an inclusivity piece. When two people get together, what I've seen is that there can be a bit of moaning and pointing out problems first, but people tend to be quite constructive when they're bouncing off each other. So you just get these wonderful ideas that are generated from these human interactions. And the fact that it's so accessible. So, the idea of bringing together people in focus groups, flying people in and sitting them down, and you've got 10 people in a room, and you can do this with hundreds of people instantly and at scale is amazing. So I think for membership bodies, AutoCare, I think this could be really, really interesting to gather insights on particular themes that are impacting the industry. But it could go further as well for organizations who want to gather, as I said, customers, stakeholders, employees, and bring them together on a particular theme and just get those insights, those deeper truths that you get when people start talking to one another. That's really what's quite profound, and it excites me about it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what excited me about it too, because I think it marries that element of human and AI. So it's got that human input, those real conversations, and then it's able to output those stories or those themes to you so you could better understand what people are talking about. I think I saw that you had hosted an Natter, I guess they go up to like 20,000 people.
Yes.
So when you say scale, you mean scale. That you can't do a 20,000 person focus group.
Absolutely.
Right?
And in an hour you've got the synthesis of all of those thoughts, those experiences. And I think when you've got an association, like the AutoCare Association, if you think about all of your members, you've got thousands of years of experience and knowledge combined. How do you harness that? And that's what is also exciting, I think, about this tool, is that you can tap into that and think what you can do with that. You can ultimately provide a new set of relevance and value to members.
Yeah, and it helps more people, more than the 10, tell their story, which I think is really cool. I got to tell my story today. We were talking about how associations were using AI and how they weren't, or what our fears or trepidations were in different projects. It was very, very interesting. So I'm really excited to see the output of that, because one of the things I think about, as we talk about brands as broadcasters, brands as storytellers, creating content, like it's so much on a day-to-day basis. It's, how do you get that information in a format that's digestible? And it feels like, there was a time where I'd be willing to read a whole book on AI, and I've probably read one or two, but now I want a white paper, or maybe a one-pager, or now a thread on X, or a carousel on Instagram, or a series on TikTok, right? Like my attention span just keeps getting lower and lower and lower, and getting into like those bite-sized snippets. And I think it's kind of cool that Natter kind of helps you do that with these bite-sized pieces or synthesis of the data that's collected.
You get the trends and the top themes and the actions. But the other thing it gives you is these anonymous quotes that are lifted directly from the conversations. It's what people actually said. I find that so powerful. That's the trend, but when you see it written down as the way that someone has said it, it just seems to take on a new meaning. Because again, it comes back to that human messiness. There's something in there that you get that deeper truth. So and again, coming back to creating content, I think one of the things that broadcasters obsess about is getting to know their audiences and what their audiences think. And I think it traditionally has been really, really difficult to know that. There's been focus groups, there's been surveys, there's been all sorts of different methods. And I've actually done a lot of sentiment tracking and emotional tracking as well. There's a piece that I did at the BBC called Science of Engagement, and we would track eye movements when people were watching films.
Oh, wow.
And it would track the emotional peaks. So just coming back to the idea that if you make someone feel something, if you really wanted to, you could make someone feel something, and then you can insert the brand straight afterwards. And
perfect.
That's the emotional peak. Not suggesting that that's necessarily what we want to do, but it is fascinating when you to try and go to those lengths. Yes, it told us a fair bit, but there was always something missing, and I feel like Natter can provide that. What do people really think? And they won't tell you in the first minute, but after they've been speaking for 5-6 minutes, you just start to really get under the skin of it all.
Get into it, yeah. So your passion and your excitement really just came out when you started talking about Natter. And I think that's so cool to see what your history was in your career, going through broadcasting, telling stories and working with brands, helping them tell better stories, and now working with Natter to help utilize technology to create new stories and hear more stories than ever before is kind of what it feels like.
Wow.
This is. I mean,
summary.
what are you excited about next for? Because this is a pretty amazing evolution. It's hard to say what's next. I could have never predicted there was AI, but you see a lot and you talk to a lot of brands, and I'm sure you have a forward-looking gaze. So what do you think is coming, or what are you excited about the most when it comes to these arenas?
I think in the creation of content, I think what you're seeing across the media landscape is this breaking down of traditional funding models, let's say. So certainly in the UK, but I think globally, the commissioning from traditional broadcasters is limiting. I think that there was a peak when it came to the streamers, Netflix, Disney, in terms of what they were investing in content, and that's come back down again to justify business models where subscriptions weren't actually more than the investment they're making in content. So that's all that's to say that content needs to come from somewhere and it needs to be funded somehow. Mm-hmm. So there's an opportunity for brands to step in. And I think there's a lot of brands out there maturing to the point where they really can make content that is of genuine entertainment to audiences. And I say that because the BBC, it was always the mantra for 100 years was inform, educate and entertain. And the latter is the most important. You cannot inform or educate anyone unless you've made them feel something first. And I think brands can really fill this gap and make brilliant content. So I think we're going to start seeing series, programs, films. And look, we have done already to a degree. Red Bull leading the way because they're not just selling energy drinks anymore. They're making content that's aligned to their values, their themes. And there's been some Dre, Beats and Dre. I think there was a great documentary on Netflix. But I think we're going to see more of that. And there'll be some that won't get it quite right. But I think we're going to see some brands get it just right in terms of genuine value to audiences and entertainment. How they measure the impact of that in terms of their bottom line, that's the next question. Maybe that's where Natter comes in. But I'm excited. It's not that I'm excited about the content itself. I'm just excited that what excites me is that we want phenomenal content to be made. Like, we're in a golden age at the moment of television, film, and I don't want that to end. Yeah. Because of, but it can continue. It's just going to evolve.
That's amazing. I think you're absolutely right. We are in a golden age. We've had more entertaining content, more informative content than we've ever had before. We have tools at our disposal like we've never had before. Yeah. Content is democratized, and there's a massive, massive opportunities for brands to be the broadcasters, to be the storytellers, and to use all those technology and tools to their advantage in order to break through the noise and really reach some of those awareness goals that they have.
And if I may, can I? Sorry, I don't know if I'm going on, but there's one more thing. You mentioned before about working with lots of brands, and so many brands say, I don't know if we've got a story. I'm not sure if it's, we've got anything to talk about. And every brand has got a story. And it comes back, it's the people, the trials and tribulations. And I don't think a lot of brands, and I wonder if auto care brands that are starting to have that voice, making content, maybe saying to themselves, if we've got anything that's that interesting. They absolutely have. They've got knowledge, experience, they've got ups and they've got downs, and I think there's a bit of confidence that should be built in that. And as you know, you've got to start. You start somewhere, and then in terms of how the podcast is just such a success and how you've seen that grow, you got to start. So to do something today. Yeah.
Okay. To close, I'm gonna riff on an idea because you were riffing on storytelling ideas, so I'm gonna riff on an idea. The aftermarket, the auto care industry, where repair and maintenance And we often get joked about because there's a sexy side of automotive. So it's all the performance parts and the turbos and the wheels and stuff. Cool. I love that side too. But we're the non-sexy side. We're the repair and the maintenance. So, I get, hey, we don't really have a story. We sell wrenches. Okay, but what if the wrench was a legacy that a father passed down to a son or a daughter? Yeah. The wrench is a saber and the kid uses it. It's a special power to repair cars as he gets older. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking superheroes because we were talking about Disney, but I get so excited about stuff like that because I see the potential in how some of our brands can really break through the noise. And I really appreciate you coming here to have this inspiring conversation with me.
It's a pleasure. I can't wait to develop the Star Wars trilogy with the aftermarket. This is phenomenal.
Let's
Great
go
idea.
For it. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you very much.
Cheers.